Okay. Okay, ladies, we're about to get started. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'll call to order the Orleans Parish School Board meeting for March 21st, 2019. Time is now 5:32. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ashley?
Present.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Allison? Here. Mr. Cleben? Here. Mr. Koppel?
Present.
Mr. Marshall?
Present.
Ms. Noel Houston?
Present.
Also present are Dr. Henderson Lewis Jr. and Sharonda Williams, Board Counsel. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I just want to remind everyone and inform others, interpretation services are available during today's meeting, provided by, where are they? Okay, will you introduce yourselves?
I'll have to look and find out which.
Okay, thank you very much. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by first place winners of the inaugural Camellia Arts Competition, Donald Soniat. Where's Donald? Okay, Donald is there. 11th grade student at Cohen College Prep. And Bonnie Spratt, 6th grade student at Hines Charter School. Okay, everyone please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Donald and Bonnie. And let's congratulate them on winners being winners of inaugural community. Now we will hear from George Washington Carver singing Rams with a selection for us.
Oh, see, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail as the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the rampart we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave? You may be seated.
Rejoice.
What you gonna do when your back's against the wall? How you gonna smile when it seems all hope is lost? Tell me what you gonna do when you need a little more grace. How you gonna smile when they try to test your faith? Hang on in there. Hang on in there.
What you gonna do when your strength gets a little weak? What song will you sing when you're feeling incomplete? Tell me what you gonna do when you're trying almost slip? What you gonna do when you seem to lose your grip? Hang on in there. Hang on in there. You got to hang on in there. 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 Everybody say hang on. Hang on in there.
Excuse me, Mr. Director. Excuse me. Hello? Hello? Can you have them come back in, please? Still singing. As we wait on the cover students to come back in,
Yes,
all of our students, will you please come up? The students that's in the audience, the students that won the art contest, please come up. Where are you? Come up.
Wants to take a picture.
We just want to take a photo with the students. We appreciate our students. We love our students.
Another round for these. Thank these schools and these students again. We need to have more performances like this before our meeting Mr. Superintendent, just a word to, just to
I do echo that, but also I just want to mention with Carver High School, if you haven't had the opportunity to visit Carver High School, not only what you heard today is happening at that school, but great things are happening with students. I'm impressed every time that I go to the school leader, they're doing a wonderful job, as well as the Opportunities Academy that's in place with collegiate academies. I applaud them for their efforts as well. And so again, this was a great treat, but also if you go to the school, it's even a greater treat. And I just wanted to share that with everyone this evening, Mr. President.
thank you, Mr. Superintendent. On with our business, adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions, deletions, or modifications? If not, may I have a motion?
Move to adopt the agenda as printed.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Approval of the minutes from regular board business meeting held on February 21st, 2019. Are there any changes?
Approve the adoption of minutes and waive the reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Going forward, moving right to the superintendent's agenda.
Thank you, Board President Brown, and good evening, everyone, once again. As I reflect on the happenings across the school district for the month of March, I'm reminded that it truly does take a village to ensure that every child can walk through the doors of any public school in New Orleans and get and receive the best possible education. That village can only blossom with community support from groups like the Camellia Club of New Orleans. And this evening, the club is sharing its appreciation for the arts by recognizing 2 students' artistic talents. And so at this time, I will ask our special guest to introduce himself, as well as to present formally the 2 awardees this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. My name is John Grimm. I'm the president of the Camellia Club of New Orleans. Art and camellias have gone hand in hand for over 200 years. Long before we had cell phones that took pictures, digital phones, or even photography, nurserymen needed to show what they had. And the only way they could do that was to turn to artists to either draw or paint the camellia. So therefore, what we as a club said, let's bring art and camellias back together and show the public, again, camellias in the form of art. For that matter, we wanted to enhance and bring it particularly to the younger generation, who oftentimes don't know what a camellia even is. Now, to go with the presentation, Nicole, who was the chairman of the art contest.
Afternoon, Nicole Tiget with the Community Society of New Orleans. I have a special place in my heart for the Orleans Parish system because I am a product of the Orleans Parish system from beginning to end, and I worked with the school system after Katrina. And my background is in the arts, and when it came time to figure out a way to get kids excited about camellias and about gardening and the patience and the project and the rewards of having beautiful flowers, we thought, let's do an art show. So this was our first year, and we invited students from the elementary, middle, and high school divisions to submit artwork. We had submissions from middle and high school, and we awarded first place in high school and in middle school. Daniel Sonyat, if he could come up. I'd like to present him with a certificate and also a cash award, because we
Donald, please accept this from
Donald wants to share the amount of the award. He can, but I won't. But there are flyers, and we will be doing this next year. Right?
Please accept this award from us. Thank you, Bonnie.
So next year, you need to talk it up in your school, all the students who are here. Please join us. There are prizes. And anything that gets art and kids together in my heart and in the heart of the Community Society just thrills us all. So thank you for letting us do this.
Okay.
Oh, and additionally, the teachers, some of the students, The other part of this was also help make the schools beautiful. So we have camellia plants for each of the
Yeah. Yeah, please let them come up. Are the parents of these students here?
And so, if you plant these a little up, they don't like to be wet, and in partial shade or partial sunlight, they will beautify your schools.
Will you all stay up and have the parents come up as
And
well?
say thank you for the pot and not the plants. Never say thank you for a plant, it won't grow. But thank you again for letting us be here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And they're befitting to a school-age population. Their name is Cotton Candy.
Let's congratulate those students again, and thank you all for coming.
We can walk outside and get some pictures.
So also would like to thank John and Nicole, and also want to once again congratulate Donald and Bonnie. I'm happy to report tonight that the School District Charter Board Governance Working Group has completed its list of recommendations. The group was comprised of a rich variety of perspectives and backgrounds, showcasing how it truly does take a village to focus and invest in public education in order to move the needle. Here to share those findings with us this evening is our School District Senior Equity and Accountability Officer, Dr. Kelly Peterson, and Eric Carfield with the Carfield Consulting Groups, which helped to facilitate this process. Dr. Peterson.
Good evening, Chairman Brown, Superintendent Lewis, and members of the board. On August 23rd, Board Member Ashley put forth Resolution 1818, charging us to look into governance for charter boards, and specifically through the Charter Board Working Group. And we looked at specifically 7 items that are listed above. The resolution outlined the membership of this group that consisted of both former and current board chairs and board members, as well as school leaders and community leaders and policy experts. We have a few of our working group members that we'd like to introduce and provide a certificate and thank them for their hard work. At this time, if your name is called, if you could please come up. The first is Dr. Kenneth Ducote, representing the Greater New Orleans Collaborative of Charter Schools. Next, we have Mr. Brian Igana, who represented a former board chair of First Line Charter Schools. Ms. Kate Mihawk, the CEO of Crescent City Schools, representing the School Leader Forum. And the last but not least, we had a duo, Ms. Caroline Romer, serving as the Executive Director of the Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools, along with Ms. Angele Delarge, Director of External Affairs. So if that duo could come up as well. So we thank you all so very much for all of your time and effort and energy that you put forth in this. Additionally, to thank my colleagues here at OPSB that also had an effort into this working group and the recommendations. The working group process was facilitated by the Caulfield Consulting Group, led by Dr. Eric Caulfield, right here to my right. And through a series of 10 90-minute meetings, yes, we put in a lot of work, and I appreciate every piece of energy that all the working members put into that. And now I'd like to pass it over to Dr. Caulfield to talk about the recommendations specifically.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. I just want to say again how absolutely excited and thrilled that I am to have been a part of this very important and seminal work. The working group, as you have received in your report, did a lot of work, and you have very detailed explanations of what the recommendations are in your report. So I won't go into a lot of detail as part of this presentation, but I did want to highlight some very important parts. The first part of the working group's charge was around board preparation, and what this consisted of was training that the board members would go through. They also recognized very early the important role that board chairs play, and so there's a whole separate training, which I'll talk about in just a moment, that they recommend. They broke the recommendation topics into 3 different categories, the first of which is the topics that would be required for every training session. The second set are those that would be suggested. They're important topics, but would be suggested that board members would follow up outside of the training, but wouldn't be required. And then the third part are those that would be made available for board members to listen and explore based on their initiative and interest. So the topics, again, against the 7 parts of the charge, the first of which I wanted to highlight is just around the common terminology. Many board members that come to the charter school, charter board experience come from outside the network or outside of the experience, so having a common vocabulary around which to work was thought of as being very important. The second are just the laws and the regulations that boards have to do to just be in compliance, was also thought to be very important. The next section of the recommendations around the training specifically deal with the nuts and bolts of how boards run, how they're structured, with a focus on equity and inclusion. And what the working group thought about this particular topic is that it's really important for boards to be able to understand and effectively engage with the communities that they serve in a way that's meaningful to them, recognizing the rich diversity that the community will present. So moving to the suggested items, again, it's more about the nuts and bolts in the structure. And also the role that boards play in the community. So moving to the topics for the board chairs in particular, one of the functions that board chairs play are to chair the meetings, which are public events. There's a lot of emphasis that was placed on being able to do that effectively and also to do it in a compliant way. Equity and inclusion, again, was something that was important. How the balance between management and governance was also important. And because board chairs are not only important figures within the school community, but also in the larger community, there was an emphasis that would be placed on recognizing that fact and preparing them to do that as well. And so onboarding and also resources to staying involved in the community was also thought to be important, and the working group recommended that that be covered. It was recommended that the training is about 2 to 3 hours. That would be enough time to cover the topics in person. For organizations that recently received new charters, board chairs would be recommended to do both the board chair training specifically and also the general one, just so that they can have a clear understanding. And then lastly, OPSB has been conducting a number of board chair convenings in the community, and it's recommended that some of the topics that's covered in the trainings in this presentation also be included there for the board chairs. The next topic was around transparency. So I won't go into all of the detail around the specifics that were there, but I did want to highlight that the group thought about transparency as being making information that's important easily accessible to whoever needs to get access. And so they thought about it in 3 different ways, and then there's a sub one, which is the 4th. So the question is, to whom are we making information available? And that's being families, the community, and the authorizer. They also talked about how we're making information available, and that's through translation into multiple languages and other ways. And then through what channels is information being made available, and that's school websites, handbooks, and others. Specifically called out in the resolution is emphasis on what's being put on school websites. That includes charter agreements, bios for the board members, and other things which the working group felt was important for community members to be able to access. Again, recognizing the importance that the board meetings play in accessing information from members of the community, they made a point to make recommendations related to those as well. The point that I would want to emphasize here is that what is being recommended is not that what we're going to talk about in just a moment is required for all board meetings, but that these are items, best practices that the working group identified as being things that would be good and make the meetings more effective that boards should consider as they host their meetings. And that includes making them accessible by time and location, emphasizing to board members the importance of being welcoming and approachable for members of the community who come, and also some logistical things which can make the meetings more effective and open. We heard a spectacular presentation by the OPSB staff on the application process as it relates to charter boards and readiness. And based on the documents that were presented in the presentation, the welcome group, or rather the working group, which was also very welcoming to these ideas, did not have any recommendations that they made for changes or amendments to the process as they heard it, which was good. The next topic was around whistleblowing. And the first thing that the working group recognized very quickly is that whistleblowing is a technical and a legal term around which there are very clearly established guidelines and policies and laws. And so what they thought about this topic was in the context of the larger complaints process which OPSB might employ. And so the recommendations that they made are to put information both on the whistleblower policy and the complaints policy on OPSB's website to make it that there are very clear steps for what happens when complaints are made, what the implications are for ones who are making the complaints, what's confidential, what parts of it are formal and informal. They also recommended that this information be publicized in all possible venues and all multiple languages as much as practical. The last part, the recommendation is that where this information is being displayed, that there's a link to the relevant state statutes and also OPSB policies. Throughout the process, the working group was provided with information on how other jurisdictions handle the parts that were in the charge of the resolution, as well as best practices from across the country. And based on their deliberations, which were very thoughtful and sometimes intense, spirited, with love for the entire city of New Orleans, based on that, they have no other recommendations outside of that which the school board has presented them in the resolution. And so with that, I will conclude this part of the presentation and turn it back over to Dr. Peterson.
As we receive this information and through working with Dr. Caulfield throughout each of these sessions, the next steps are as follows. First is to share these recommendations with our charter board chairs for the purpose of providing a resource that can be utilized to share best practices. Additionally, utilizing the recommendations of the working group to work towards our authorizer-led training per our policy for our new board chairs as well as our new board members. And lastly, working with our OPSB board to evaluate and determine if there's any policy implications in any of this. So at this time, if there are any questions, that concludes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to just say thank you. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate all of our board chairs and community members and community organizations that were a part of this process. It was a long process for us to get to this place, but as I think Dr. Caulfield articulated very well, everyone was working together to figure out what the right answers are for where we need to move and lean towards to ensure that our system is more transparent and that our board efficacy continues to improve. So really excited about that. Thank you guys so much for the recommendations and looking forward to working with you, Dr. Peterson, as we figure out how we move forward. Thank you.
Yes. And I would like to just echo the same thing from board member Ashley. Definitely want to thank the two of you and everyone that worked so hard to get us to those recommendations. I would also like to say one of the benefits of local control has been that all charter boards now have to be complying with the OPSB standards for boards. In the first year, we have already verified every board member across the district, verified board member composition compliance, including our 60% residency requirement and parent board member requirement. ongoing monitoring compliance with open meeting laws, and ensuring school websites are compliant. As I continue to think about our district, we always have to think about the wonderful individuals we have in the district and how they continue to inspire others, our students and our families and other educators. But among those ranks are the Orleans Parish social workers, all who are essential parts of this village of our fabric. The month of March is set aside to recognize social workers. And we'd like to take this time to just thank all of our social workers across the city of New Orleans, thank them for what they do every single day on behalf of our students and our families. But in particular, I have to mention our very own Angela Wiggins. She leads our Office of Child Welfare and Attendance. Yesterday, she received Social Worker of the Year from the Louisiana chapter of the National Association of Social Workers for our hard work. Let's give Angela a round of applause as she comes forward. So yesterday, a group of us were able to travel to Baton Rouge to surprise Angela as she received her award. And I will say, not only was she recognized, but when they read her bio, she can go ahead and turn that into a book. A very extensive story. However, one very unique part of her story is her career started in Orleans Parish, and now she's back in the school district as well. So even as she received this award on yesterday, this was someone who grew up in this system as an educator and who is back in the system leading. And so we thank you for your service. We thank you for your leadership. And again, congratulations on such a great accomplishment. Let's give her another round of applause. The final update I have this evening concerns our legislative agenda, and I would like to take this time to thank our entire board, our board president, Mr. Brown, our vice president, Ms. Leslie Ellison, and our legal and legislative chair, Mr. Ashley. I'd like to thank our school leaders and our community stakeholders also for their feedback. We have ambitious plans for this session, I want everyone to know. Taking concrete steps forward to having our board vision and goals realized. This board has set a vision that says that every student receives a high-quality education that fosters his or her individual capabilities while ensuring that they thrive and are prepared for social, civic, and economic success. This is our third meeting concerning our legislative agenda. It's very, very clear. We need more public funding through our MFP, the Minimum Foundation Program, from the state level. We need pay raises for our teachers and our support personnel. State resources to go to special needs students and pre-K funding. We want to make sure that we keep guns out of our schools, and we want to help our veteran teachers easily return back to work and to serve. In addition to those 9 priorities that we have, priority number 10 looks at making sure now that we have a unified system that we can continue to work to stabilize our system. And after hearing a lot of feedback from the committee meeting and all of the engagement that has taken place, I really want to update my thoughts on our recommendation of priority number 10 to update the School Facility Preservation Fund legislation to allow for unexpected revenues of approximately $10 million to the following: per pupil funding, specialized programming, and system-wide needs. And additionally, to update the Preservation Fund legislation to distribute funds more equitably, and to include capital improvement funds to support more flexible finance spending inclusive of construction. Overall, I must say this district, our board, we have a hard job to do. Resources are not enough to meet the needs. We must make tough decisions, set priority, and most importantly, fill the major gaps. Overall, everything needs to fit into the larger plan, and we must make sure that the budget is balanced to make this happen. And in recent years, we have dedicated major funding to facility preservation, while on the other hand, per pupil classroom funding barely moved. This is not what balance, in my opinion, what it looks like. This is why this evening, moving forward, we are proposing shifting $10 million in sales tax revenue to meet the pressing high priority needs here in the district. First of all, $100 more for each student at each school. To take between $2 and $2.5 million for high need students. I give an example of the Travis Hill School. We have a working group right now looking at even middle school. How do we have middle school alternatives? So having the second set of dollars to help with our high need students. And then third, about $3 million for system-wide needs. I want to be clear this evening that 100% of the 2014 approved millage revenue will still go to facility preservation. Portion of the penny that I'm discussing on this evening of the OPSB sales tax is previously restricted by our state legislators. Will go from being that fund, or that portion of the penny will go from being exclusively reserved for facility preservation to going to schools, programs, and citywide needs. For example, in 2014, as we think of our new facilities, our renovated schools, they will get $500 per pupil with the facility preservation. That will remain the same. But when we look at our non-renovated facilities, we know that they need more and they have to get more. So we're proposing $800, not just the $650 that was expected or proposed in 2014. And also, new capital improvement funds will provide additional resources for facilities. So the major part of what we're trying to do right now, part one is to lift the restriction on the sales tax. Set rules, process of using the system-wide funds, and again, to create a capital improvement fund to mobilize resources for non-renovated facilities. That's what we want to have considered during this upcoming session. Then, this is where the work happens locally. The district must define the rest, set local policy. But the first bucket of the system-wide needs and giving dollars directly to schools, this will flow directly through our differentiated funding formula that has already been established. We want to be able to set citywide or system-wide needs, to have this a very transparent process, and also, of course, we will have to follow our RFP process. And further policies will be brought up concerning procedures and rules for the Capital Improvement Fund. But we have to be very, very clear this evening. We cannot put the cart before the horse. Most policy points are open questions. So as we think of the big picture and having the $10 million rededicated, we also have to look at how we will work on the local level to set policy and have it in place for the implementation. In closing, I have to always ask myself, how can I help our young people succeed? How can we all make a difference? Doing nothing means preventing all important dollars from getting to where they are needed most. This evening, we cannot sit on the sidelines. The children of New Orleans are counting on us. And I'm asking the board, as you all move forward in this agenda and consider your action items, I ask you to move forward so that we can, as administration and as a board, move forward to prepare for a successful legislative session. President Brown, that concludes my report for this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Lewis. Before moving on to our action items, I, on behalf of the board, wish to congratulate and to thank Ms. Angela Wiggins and the Youth Opportunity Center for the really, really difficult work and challenging work that you do on behalf of our students, our families, and our schools. And congratulations again on a well-deserved award. Thank you. We now move to action items. I yield to Board Counsel to read the items and recommendations, beginning with 4.1, 2019 Orleans Parish School Board Legislative Agenda.
Action item 4.1, it's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopt the 2019 OPSB legislative agenda and authorize the superintendent to direct the district's legislative activities in accordance with the adopted agenda.
Okay. We have a motion.
I would like to offer a substitute motion.
Okay.
To adopt items 1 through 9 and amend number 10 of the 2019 OPSB legislative agenda as follows. Update the School Facility Preservation Fund legislation to allow for unexpected revenues of approximately $10 million to go to the following: per pupil funding, specialized programming, and system-wide needs. Additionally, update the Preservation Fund legislation to distribute facility funds more equitably and to include a capital improvement fund to support more flexible facility spending inclusive of construction, and authorize superintendent to direct those legislative activities in accordance with the adopted agenda.
Second.
Substitute motion and a second.
And we have several comment cards. Kate Mihawk.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Kate Mihawk, the CEO of Crescent City Schools, but tonight I'm speaking on behalf, I'm the president also of the School Leader Forum. Last night we had a meeting to discuss the potential facility legislation. There are 20 school leaders there, and I'm going to try to represent their views tonight for you. Before I do that, I want to acknowledge a couple of things. Every school last night acknowledged that there may not be enough money to do everything we want to do with facilities, to build, to renovate, to preserve. But there's also not enough money to do all the things we want to do in our schools. So we don't want not enough to mean we don't think about different ways to use it. And I think Dr. Lewis clearly showed that while facility funding has been going up, non-restricted MFP funding has not. And in real-time dollars, we're actually getting $236 less per pupil than we were getting in 2014. So things are tight. So we do really appreciate thinking creatively and differently about how to use all of this MFP money and whether it all needs to be in the facility like it is. So all school leaders agreed that that was worth thinking about. But we have not seen legislation, and I'm not sure if it's been written yet, so we will not take a position for or against any motion you have here tonight. We just want to provide some information. So all schools, as surprise, are in favor of raising the MFP by $100 at least. We would love more. We are in favor of that. That shouldn't be a surprise. And we're also very much in favor of alternative programming, the ones that we have and the ones that we may create in the future, as Dr. Lewis mentioned. Everybody agreed those were good ideas. A lot of questions around how the money would flow, how the differentiated funding would work, how would you do $100 per pupil, could it be more, would there be years that it would be more, many, many questions, but we definitely agreed these were good ideas. The place that we were the most conflicted was in the third bucket, in the system-wide needs. There's a lot of questions about MFP money going to district-wide initiatives. There's a lot of questions about how and when and how much, and it would be equitable, and I can talk for a very long time.
Yeah, that's your
I'm
time.
almost done. I could talk for a lot about where people were, but that's the area we're going to be most interested in when we see the legislation and to be able to give feedback. So I think school leaders are very engaged in this. I think a lot of you have heard from them. We appreciate how much Dr. Lewis's team has engaged us and continued to do so, and we really want to be a part of that moving forward.
Dr. Ken Ducote.
Ken Ducote, Greater New Orleans Collaborative Charter Schools, Suite 3040, 2401 West Bend Parkway. The great Russian author Alexander Solzhenitsyn said that the yes man is the enemy that your friends will argue with you. There has been a lot of friendship in the discussion over this the last few months, and that's been very positive. It has resulted in, I think, a lot better understanding on the part of the school people and the needs in terms of how the system looks at the needs, and also I think of the system in terms of what this particular funding source was. We support 1 through 9 wholeheartedly, even though we haven't seen the specifics yet on it, because we know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be the same kind of legislation to allocate funds that have come up before. As it relates to number 10, we don't have a formal position right now on it because we haven't seen the exact act. And we do appreciate the fact that there was mention of engagement of the school leaders and the stakeholders in trying to define what that language is going to be. We, of course, are concerned with preserving the facilities preservation. We do understand that that the district has to deal with different issues, and most of the areas seem to be reasonable. We are concerned with how that actually is going to line up and what are going to be the actual words that are included in the legislation. Again, transparency is a big, important term. So with that, we look forward to continue the dialogue on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan Smith.
Good evening, Stan Smith, 135 Pelican Avenue, New Orleans. I'm here this evening because, particularly with respect to the last item on your legislative agenda, that I have maybe a little bit of a vested interest in that. First of all, I certainly recognize the importance of rebalancing revenues and programs to meet all the needs, and I recognize that there's not enough to go around. I was concerned a little bit when I saw some of the wording in the presentation at the committee, and I think Mr. Ducote covered some of that the other evening, that there was a $35 million promise for facilities. That was an estimate. The promise was all of the revenues, and I would hate to have a precedent established that every time the revenues continue to increase, you can take anything above $35 million and pull it to another use. So I can only encourage that you move with caution when you do things like this. You know, at the time that we did the legislation for facility and preservation, $35 million by our estimates was not enough. And I think if you look at the new facilities and the renovated facilities, the facilities that got little to no work, I hate to say it, but some of the new and renovated facilities are now 8 and 10 years old. They're reaching the time when we're going to have to put more resources back into them. It is important that we have those resources. With respect to reprogramming the work, let's make sure that it's enough money to accomplish something. To move something over and put a Band-Aid on it is not, I don't think is going to accomplish anything for us. So let's make sure that if we're going to reprogram from any resource to another resource, that it's adequate to accomplish the needs of that resource as much as we can, and that there's accountability on it. There's a lot of accountability in the bill on facility preservation on how those funds are used. And so I would like to see that accountability be transferred to any other use that may be determined for those funds.
Thank you. Caroline Romer? Okay. Angel Delarge?
Hi, Angel Delarge, LAPCS. As the policy and legislative representative of a majority of schools in New Orleans, LAPCS considers our role to provide our memberships with accurate information and to facilitate opportunities for open discussion. For legislative matters, our goal is to identify needs that need to change, laws that need to change, and analyze and review proposed legislation, and to be a trusted resource for elected leaders on matters that impact K-12 classrooms. Related to this proposed legislation, I facilitated individuals, small and large group collaborative spaces, inviting partner organizations as well as OPSB to discuss legislation directly. We have provided these opportunities for schools to understand facts of the legislative agenda, to ask questions, so we can best advocate on their behalf. And as always, we've done this work without prejudice. The discussion on this bill was primarily 3 questions. Do schools feel comfortable diverting the money? Do they agree these are the right challenges? And the most debated, What role should the district play in those areas? With that being said, outside of dedicating additional funds for buildings that didn't receive FEMA facilities money, we were unable to build a full agreement to support or object to the legislative topics as presented, especially concerning item 10. Schools collectively had many questions about how exactly dollars will be utilized in the areas of alternative ed and for teacher pipeline. While the conversations with the district were thorough, it was of the opinion of many that there were not enough details. At this time, LAPCS cannot take a position on the legislation. If the board chooses to move forward with the proposal, LAPCS will continue to engage with membership to review the bill and work with legislators in areas of agreement or concern. We appreciate the work that has been done by OPSB staff on this issue and hope to continue to work with them in creating solutions that benefit students throughout the district.
Thank you. Next, Deidre Lewis.
In 2014, I voted against this. I voted against the whole resolution to do the tax thing, to have this money, because I knew this would happen. I knew that you all would do a bait and switch like you're doing now. And I want to know who would be in charge if the monies were going to be diverted, because I know you're going to do it anyway. So who would be in charge? Are those charter operators who I don't trust anyway, the ones who let the children get on buses that are not insured, are they going to be the ones in charge? And it amazes me how you don't have this on the agenda at all, about the bus situation, about the lunch going on at the other school, and you want to talk about this money grab. I don't want this money moved. If you want money for all these 1 through 9 items, you should do what we did. Go to the Get Resources, raise taxes, put in millages or whatever. Don't touch the money. Don't divert it, because the people who you have in front of those, who you have directing those charters, I don't trust them. They don't do a good job of what they're allotted to, and they have complete autonomy to do whatever it is that they want to do. So no, don't touch it. And the next meeting, we're going to have our people here to make sure that this is not going to go the way you want it to go, but the way the people want it to go, because when they voted for that in 2014, they did not vote for that. So later on, when you think everybody's sleeping and forgotten about it and people are getting ready for the spring and summer, we just let that pass. No, we're not. We're going to give you big pushback on that. Absolutely. And I'm sick of you hustlers and grifters coming in here on the backs of children and closing schools. You know we have a big issue with that. And taking money from schools and drying schools up, taking away the only elementary school in Central City. See, all those things are not on the agenda, and they should be, because those children have been scarred by that. And you do what you want to do with people's money, and it's not going to happen this time. Keep your paws off that money. Raise money another way if you want to do all these 1 through 9 items. I'm going to get my posse here next month, and you know we're not going to be playing with y'all.
Next, Dylan Bourne, and after Dylan Bourne, Natalie Clark.
I'm Dylan Bourne. I'm with the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance. And I'd like to ask, how many members of this board have own cars or other reliable methods of transportation? All of you? Because a lot of people in New Orleans don't. And setting a meeting up in the West Bank, supposed to be a public New Orleans meeting, does not make it a public or democratic meeting. And these sheets of paper, these informational sheets reminding us of the rules of these meetings, obviously a response to the mass democratic movements that have been fighting charterization and privatization for months now. These are in that same vein. They're anti-democracy, they're anti-democratic, and there's nothing public about them. But it's no surprise that this board would not be public, would not be democratic when it's running a program of privatization in favor of business interests and against students' interests, against parents' interests. But the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance will stand up to that. New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance represents the 100,000 hospitality workers in this city. We pour your drinks, we clean your dishes, we serve your meals, we cook your food, and we support this city's tourism economy. And we're affected by every privatization, pro-corporate trend that this city government is trying to introduce. We fight it in the buses, we fight privatization of buses, we fight privatization of healthcare, and we're fighting privatization of schools. And we're not standing for this. Thank you.
Natalie Clark.
Can you please reiterate the purpose of speaking and the rules around that, please.
The comment should be directed to the action item on which you've submitted a card.
Natalie Clark, 8326 Nelson Street. I'm not sure if this is the item that I should be commenting on. I'm so sorry for any inconvenience. I've only been coming to these meetings for a few months, as opposed to the many native New Orleanian
ma'am.
Black organizers.
Ma'am.
Excuse me?
Hello?
Yeah?
She can tell you which item we're speaking, which item you're addressing.
Action 4.1.
Okay.
Yes.
So you are speaking to that issue?
Yes, I am speaking to this issue. Thank you. I've only been coming to these meetings for a few months, as opposed to the many native New Orleanian Black organizers who have been standing up for the rights of students and educators since before I knew how to talk. I'd like to voice my concern about the sheet on public participation in school board meetings. This sheet, which neither I nor any of the staff at the sign-in table had seen before, outlines rules on public comment cards. So I don't see that in the agenda anywhere, which is why I just wanted to comment on Action 4.1. My understanding is that it's always been acceptable for people to allot their time to another person. And moreover, I just wanted to emphasize the fact that many of these rules outlined in this paper are not enforced equally on different speakers. I myself have seen people who support privatization of schools in the city go over their 2 minutes without being called out by the board members, while Black organizers speaking about injustices, racism, and issues with charter schools are persistently asked to stop talking when they go over time. I am not from here, but I do stand in solidarity with those that see the pervasive effects of using public funds, taxpayer money, to run schools like they are corporations. In cities across the United States, parents, students, and educators are taking a stand against charter schools, and while you may attempt to silence these voices with this type of anti-democratic, I don't really know what else to call it, rules or regulations or whatever, stakeholders will continue to come and say, erase the board. Thank you so much. And again, I'm so sorry if this wasn't the appropriate agenda point. I just wasn't sure what to comment on because I didn't see it anywhere in the agenda. Thank you.
That's it.
Is that it? We do have a motion, a substitute motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries.
Action item 4.2, negotiation with Hanno for land abutting Booker T. Washington property. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board authorize the OPSB administration to confect an agreement with the Housing Authority of New Orleans to procure land directly abutting Booker T. Washington High School from Hanno for a price that does not exceed the appraised value as authorized by revised statute 41905. And Mr. Sealing has some additional information regarding this item.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify a couple points as it relates to this resolution. If approved tonight, this would give the administration the authority to confect an agreement with Hanno to obtain the land abutting Booker T. Washington. It is important to note that property must be declared surplus prior to disposal, whether that's through sale or a land swap. So we would have to come in front of you if we worked out an agreement for pieces of land for approval to surplus those properties. Timeline process, what that would look like. At the April board meeting, we would bring to the board any property that we think deems unnecessary for future use by OPSB for school purposes. If the board supported that and allocated it to the surplus property list, then we would announce publicly and communicate with charters directly to inform them of the availability of property. Should interest be expressed by any charters, we would go ahead and order an appraisal and begin negotiations with them for sale of that property. If interest were not expressed for those specific pieces of property, then we would be able to move forward for a potential land swap deal with Hanno.
We just need a motion now.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We do have a motion.
Second.
We do have a second.
We have several comment cards. Ann Middleton, and after Ms. Middleton, Michael Mancuso.
Ann Middleton, member of the Tyrone-Bulani Neighborhood Association Board. Thank you for this time today. Thank you for that clarification and further clarification, much clearer clarification of the rule that you're planning on enacting as opposed to what we were told yesterday when we were told that charter schools would not be considered before the swap. So the representative of your school board has given an impression that there are no other options for the board to acquire the Booker T neighboring green site other than to transfer the McDonough 7 property to Hano. That's what we've been told. I have 3 points or 3 options that I'd like for you to explain about why this is the only option, as we have been told. For the record, on the record, if you would understand, once I stop talking, explain these things for us. The first being, why wouldn't you wait on the new Hano director to see if he's receptive to a cash sale, because he might be more open than to the present board of Hano that says they will only swap with you if they take the property. Secondly, the second thing I'd like to understand is the swap of other Orleans Parish School Board properties, why the list could not be offered again, because we understand the list is very long, and from what I'm hearing just now with Mr. Sealing is that possibly McDonough 7, which we were told was going to be definitive in the swap, it may not even be on that parcel. So we want to understand first, the option of the cash sales, secondly, the option of the other properties on the long list, and third, about why isn't a cooperative endeavor agreement going to be used, as we had been told in November, that would allow use, that would be the fiscally responsible method, we believe, and that the school board could obtain the site and not have to divest itself of its assets, housing a high-performing
Thank
school
you.
at
That's
this
your
time.
time. Michael Mancuso. After Mr. Mancuso, William Giles.
I think that works. Thanks. Good evening. I'm Michael Mancuso at 1034 Milan Street. Just to follow up on a couple of the comments from Mr. Sealing, we just had a few legal points and procedural points that we wanted to clarify. One, just to clarify the scope of the motion tonight, whether, number one, that authorizes the administration to negotiate and approve the transfer without further board approval, or two, whether the motion requires further board approval after the properties have been identified. Also, second, just wanted to clarify, I believe that what Mr. Sealing agreed is that under the law and OPSB internal policy, the property, McDonough number 7, before it's transferred, is required to be offered to other charter schools in accordance with state statutes and the OPS policy DFL dealing with the transfers of property. And if the board chooses not to authorize the charter schools, we suggest that the internal policy DFL be amended before they do so to keep things consistent. And then one concern that you may hear from other residences here is that after the transfer of the property, there's a concern that the site may become abandoned or vacant with a delay in development. And we understand that Mr. Kleeman has suggested that the transfer of the school, McDonough number 7 school property be conditioned upon the party that acquires it timely completing a rehabilitation of the property. We think that suggestion is a great one, and we request that the motion today for the final approval of the transfers be conditioned upon any party that's acquiring the property complete the rehabilitation of the property within 270 days after the school ceases operation and the site control is turned over to the acquiring party. And there's ample precedent for this because the city and Nora do the same thing. Thanks.
Thank you. William Giles. And after Mr. Giles, Rella Zaplatal.
Good afternoon. My name is William Giles. I'm the Vice President of the Booker Washington Alumni. I'm a graduate of Booker Washington, class of 1964. I was the last principal of Booker Washington prior to Katrina. I would just like to talk about this additional land in 3 areas: green spaces, health, and academic growth. The green spaces, because of the new building, only allows 10% of green space at the school. The health aspect deals with outside activities in terms of football, volleyball, soccer, in terms of the health, in terms of the obesity problem we have. It gives kids more time outside to exercise, to help burn up those calories that those Burger King burgers put on them. The academic growth is important in terms of time on task. Without that space, kids in activities must get on buses, go to other locations. When it's time practice is over, get back on buses, come back. This particular land would enhance the academic times in terms of it would give kids more time on task in terms of studying in class. It would give them more time for homework and study at home. The whole process of the academic group and the school is to educate kids. So we are saying that we need more time on task to make that happen. Without this land, it's going to be a big concern and problem. I think everybody looks at it as just land. It's not. It's the total growth of the community in terms of the total growth also of the student.
Thank
it's
you,
the
Mr.
mind,
Giles.
the
That's your
body,
time.
and everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Rella Zaplatal, and then Tom Schonbaum.
Rella Zaplatal, 4310 Britannia Street. I'm here as both president of the Truro Bowling Neighborhood Association and a resident living only 3 blocks from McDonough number 7. We were very excited to hear that y'all are actually going to offer the school 2 charter schools before you decide to do a land swap. That makes us very happy. Our main goal is to keep McDonough number 7 a community neighborhood school, which is what it is. It's an asset to the families who live in our neighborhood and to the city as a whole. We, today, I'm sure you all saw the article by The Advocate that said there are so many families who have to bring their kids far away to go to school when we have a school right in our neighborhood that y'all want to close, which is really upsetting to us. We understand that Audubon Charter is vacating the building, which is fine, but we hope that y'all try and find a charter operator who wants to stay in our neighborhood and be a neighborhood school, because that's what we really want. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Schonbaum. And after Mr. Schonbaum, Brian Chamberlain.
Thank you for clarifying with this matter regarding the swap, the offering to the charter school being going forward first, as was represented to us in November 12 meeting with Ben Cleveland, Mr. Sealing, and Ms. Robertson from the OPSB. Some other misinformation, though, we were given at these meetings, November 12 and March 18, bear going over. Mr. Cleveland didn't hide the fact that OPSB was dearly intent upon gaining this property next to the $60 million school, Booker T. Washington, that was built without the forethought of providing a playing field or green space. Yet he communicated that his personal involvement and goals would ultimately be aligned with his constituency, the city residents by whom and for whom he was elected to represent on the OPSB. We understand the need for Booker T to get this land. We don't feel like Hano should be leveraging you in order to let that make that happen. We have no control, as was explained to us in the March 18 meeting, on what happens with McDonough 7 if it is in a swap. But back to the November 12 meeting, Mr. Cleveland suggested that OPSB was legally bound to provide the on-site contiguous playing field space for the school, yet many of us asserted that this is not the case and that students may be transported off-sites for sports, as is still the practice in many of the other schools in New Orleans. I know that it's not ideal, but we need clarification on that point. Although Mr. Cleveland is not a Hano official, he authoritatively asserted that Hano ultimately were to procure the property, they would be beholden to schedule and attend public meetings with the community, and that any project that they might wish to move forward with would be subject to the approval of residents in the TBNA. He also stated that this meeting—
That's your time, Mr. Schonbaum. Thank you. Brian Chamberlain.
I protest. I'd like this letter to be
Wait. Mr. Schonbaum. Oh. Brian Chamberlain. Okay. Ali Bustamante.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Ali Bustamante, and I am a resident and property owner in the Truro neighborhood, 4023 Camp Street. I am here for two reasons: to adamantly protest any use of the McDonough 7 property for anything other than a school. For one, I have a 2- and 5-year-old. Not only will their lives be impacted, but any child in that neighborhood, their lives will be directly impacted if this is something other than a school. The reason for that is you all, in your wisdom, have actually given preference to neighborhood schools, right, in your reassessment of the OneApp application. However, if there are no schools in the neighborhood, that is really of no use and no value to us. Secondly, and by the way, in terms of that neighborhood change, part of the wisdom of you all was that to identify that moving kids across town has huge negative impacts on their learning, particularly by having to wake up early, which ultimately leads to negative educational outcomes. The second point that I ultimately wanted to make is that that school has been a school since 1877 for over 140 years. The city, the neighborhood, the parish has ultimately, and this board has seen it necessary to have that school in function. It's functioning today, it'll function next year, and it's going to function 2 years from now. So there is no reason to rush into any kind of discussion to make that property anything other than a school. Thank you.
Doc, your 5-year-old where does he or she attend school?
We actually applied in OneApp and did not get any single placement, so we were forced to go to private school.
Oh, okay.
Lisa Kelly, and after Lisa Kelly, Damian Koulas.
Lisa Kelly, can I defer my time back to Tom Schonberg?
No.
No, okay.
No, you can,
Okay.
your 2
I'm a
minutes are-
resident in the neighborhood also. I live at 4116 Chestnut Street. I am in agreement with the previous speakers 100%, and I would like to, I've been there almost 20 years, but keep it as a school, any school. I mean, it's worked very well. It's a wonderful neighborhood with a neighborhood school, and I don't see any reason to change that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Damian Koulas, and after Damian Koulas, Nolan McSwain.
Hello, I'm in 1207 Constantinople, which is about a block and a half from the school. I'm also in the Truro Bulini Neighborhood Association. I'm a little curious because, again, this motion mentions specifically a price and not a swap, and yet all we've been hearing is that the swap is literally the only thing that's considered. Clearly, everybody that has spoken so far has had an issue with this swap. It seems a little disingenuous to call it a price and then have this swap deal going on in the background. It's not even mentioned here, and yet everyone that has spoken to us so far has virtually said it's a done deal, that the swap is already agreed to. Everyone has said this is what we're going to do. These are the properties that are interested in, and it's going to happen. The price, the current assessments, not assessments, but the current prices that have been set, the market prices on the properties clearly exceed the vacant land that's there, and yet this says that it can't exceed the value. So I'm a little curious that the procedure that's been described to us so far in multiple meetings doesn't anywhere near match the wording that's in this document in the supposed motion that's being passed. So either what we've been told so far is wrong, or this, if this motion passes as it is and it's just a simple price, a cash price, then we're wasting our time complaining about a property swap. But that doesn't seem to be the case from what we've been told so far. So I think we'd all like a little clarification on that. Thank you.
Nolan McSwain, and after Mr. McSwain, Deidre Lewis.
Good evening. I'm Nolan McSwain. I'm the business manager of the Booker T. Washington Alumni Association. Please forgive me, I got a sinus infection. Mr. Giles, who was the last principal of Booker Washington, followed me as principal at Booker Washington. We were both graduated in the class of 1964 at Booker Washington. We've been fighting this battle since Katrina. You have put up a remarkable edifice, and we're hoping that it will be able to educate and continue the legacy of the school that was there before. However, we're short on green space. It's unreasonable to expect those kids to stay predominantly in that building all day. You're going to have problems. But they also need to get out there. You're going to do softball, you're going to do soccer, and you're going to do all these other things. We have to have that land. This is the final piece of the puzzle. Now, in terms of which schools will be swapped, which schools will be purchased or sold, that's on you. I'm advocating for the children. I want the best for those children. Everything that Mr. Giles had said, I was getting ready to say, so I don't want to repeat what he said. I speak for all of the students that are currently at the Woodson site that will be moving over to the Booker Washington site. I speak for the thousands of alumni who I communicate with regularly. You see 3 people in most cases when we're in meetings. However, you've been to our activities and you know the people that we speak to. These people want to see that school return to its glory. Booker Washington has produced a number of exceptional people throughout not just this community, but the world.
Thank you, Mr. McSwain. That's your time.
And we want to continue that legacy. We need that land.
This final speaker on this item is Deidre Lewis.
Why the property can't stay intact and the people at Booker T use the property? Why are we having this discussion, period? Just tell me why. Who wants it, who sent you, and what you're looking for? Leave the property alone. Leave Booker T alone. It's bad enough you built it on that dump site anyway. Leave it alone. Stop messing around. And whatever that Uptown Rex Club, ProPublica, whatever told y'all to do, skip that. The people said, leave it alone. And Ben, you already know, I think little of you as it is. Do your job. Keep the Booker T property intact. No swapping nothing. And Max 7, leave that a school as well. People don't want it nothing else. Don't make it no $2 million condo.
That's the final speaker on this item, Mr. Brown.
Okay. We had a motion.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Can we have order in the room, please?
Please.
Please.
Please, thank you. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Cleveland.
Thank you. As the district representative for the area where McDonough 7 is, and while technically not where Booker T. Washington is, it's right on the border. Many of the students who attend Booker T. Washington are in my district. I wholeheartedly support the superintendent's recommendation to move forward. To recap, district officials between the RSD and OPSB have been trying to get this land for Booker T. Washington for 12 years. And finally, it looks like we might have a way to do it. Children deserve to have a full educational experience. That includes extracurricular activities, high school athletics. They need to run, they need to play, and this is the only way that OPSB staff could finally figure out how to get this done. We owe that to these children. And while it is true that there are neighbors around McDonough 7 who are not happy, they do not represent all the neighbors. I live in the neighborhood too. And I have absolutely no problem as a resident of the neighborhood with an affordable housing option in our neighborhood. And I know for a fact that the board did not vote unanimously, so I must not be the only one. And so I'm in a position, finally, I will say, where I have constituencies that have different interests. And I'm going to side with children every single time. And this is the right thing to do for kids, and we must move forward.
Okay. Any other comment?
I have a question to the superintendent.
Question?
I know we've not identified any property whatsoever. This is to authorize you to enter into negotiations with Hanno and your administration. I just want to make sure that whatever we do, if kids are in a school that is operating, we're not going to move students and disrupt their learning process for a swap. I mean, that can happen when school's concluded or some other time. I just wanted to get clarification on that.
Yeah, so first of all, when we look at buildings that are not in use, I want to first of all clarify that, yes, we have a school in the building that has requested to move to another building, so that's why this building will eventually become vacant. As we look at working through...
What's the timeline on that?
When are they, is it?
2021.
2021. So what we're looking at is buildings that are not in use. As it was stated earlier from Mr. Sealing, we're going to look at those buildings, see which buildings we have available. Charters will have the opportunity if they're interested, just like what was the school that Encore is in? Shaw. They wanted to purchase the building. They went ahead and purchased the building. If we put the building out, they are not interested in purchasing it, and we identify that as surplus property, we're coming back to this board to make that declaration. This board will act upon it. Then it will allow us to continue the process on whatever the properties we're going to use for Hanno. Now, there could be properties that we discussed that we already have on our surplus list. The board has already surplus some properties. So we're not putting those properties out because they have been surplus already. So again, as we look at this process, that's where we are. And every single month, whether it's in my superintendent's report or on the property committee, we're going to be giving an update so everyone clearly can know what's happening. There's no back room or whatever was said today. And again, I'm going to say this. When it comes down to Booker T. Washington, and you heard tonight, 12 years trying to secure, one, rebuilding the school. We're almost there, a fabulous facility, and it would be a shame to have that fabulous facility. No, we don't own the property that we're trying to swap, and that's why we're trying to get it, because it's right next to the school, to make sure the students who are there, that I will say, if you look at their academic performance, it is a school that is doing well here in the city of New Orleans. And again, we want to make sure as they move into their new building, they don't just have a new building, but they also have the green space to go along with it. So I know we have challenges here. I know there's some disagreements as we heard here on today. But at the end of the day, as superintendent, I'm going to make recommendations that are in the best interest of the students. And I would encourage our community and our public to understand as we go through a process to educate our students. This is our future, and we must make sure, no ma'am, I'm able to speak. And so as we go through this process, we are going to go ahead and make sure that the students at Booker T. Washington, as they move into this brand new facility, that they have the land to go along with it. And that's my commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Dr. Lewis, I want to go back to my question, which wasn't answering that, about moving students in the middle of a year.
No, we're not moving. When the students move out of the school, that's when the school is going to be vacant.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. 4.3.
Action item 4.3, and it's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board authorize the General Counsel to prepare a contract with Thompson Building Energy Systems for commissioning services at the new campus of the New Orleans Charter Mathematics and Science High School.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
One comment card, Jewel Prim.
Hello, Jewel Prim, 31 McAllister Drive. Sci-High is a school full of children with beautiful minds. This is something that we all know. But it pains me when I find out that there are students there that feel and recognize that they are being left behind in regards to what their access to a diverse education looks like. Diverse in the way in which their minds can grow not only in science and mathematics, but also in their personal interests and knowledge of power within themselves, the power to advocate for yourselves and the things that they want to do. These students should have the same opportunities to develop holistically, just as their neighbors at Lusher. I mean, if you go to those buildings, buildings, they're completely different, and like their access to what they're able to do as students is very different, and it's not fair because yes, they are both charter schools, but charter schools even foster inequities between one another based off of their focusing and funding. We now have students from different charter schools inadvertently competing to produce testing and performancing results as if they were racehorses. These are the results of this capitalist structure. These are the results of not caring about children as you say you do. Education should be equitable across the board. It should be ensured that this new building should not disrupt the learning and culture for these students while it is being made. Every student in New Orleans deserves so much more, and we know that here. I would also like to take the remainder of my time to raise the issue of the common legislation that doesn't allow community members to allot their time to another person and to not make accusatory comments. An equitable governing body understands that critique and listening to their citizens allows for innovation, growth, and effectiveness. This legislation is anti-free speech, anti-Black, understanding that your constituents and students, a majority of them are Black, and their parents, therefore, are Black, and the people who care about them are Black and those allies, and oppressive in nature to your constituents. I would like to say erase the board.
That's the last comment card on that item, Mr. Brown.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on 4.3. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, 4.3 passes.
Action item 4.4, it's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approve the request from Living School, Inc. to allow Living School to operate as its own LEA effective July 1st, 2019.
So moved.
I'd like to make a second, but
Go ahead.
ask that we take action item 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, which are all basically.
We have comments on a number of those, sorry.
Okay, we do have a second, and we have comments.
Not on this one.
Okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, 4.4 passes. 4.5,
Action item 4.5, it is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approve the request from IDEA Public Schools to operate as its own LEA effective July 1st, 2019.
So moved.
we have a motion.
Second.
We do have a second.
We have one comment card, Deidre Lewis.
Okay.
Where's the Living School going to be located? Where's that school? Nobody knows? Where's the Living School? Huh? On Bullitt? And the IDA? Where's that school? Go there. Okay, this is what I want. The same thing I've been wanting since we started. I want our schools back under the system. I'm very distressed to learn that the bus system, or the lack of thereof, is transporting children without insurance. There are accidents going on. People don't have their proper paperwork in place. Some people driving without CDL licenses. Things like that should be on this agenda. When we come next month, you need to put that on the agenda. Okay. I'm also concerned about all these new schools that's coming in. They get here a couple of years, they make their millions, and then they roll out. You ought to be sick of that too. I guess we back to erasing the board because you're not doing your job. I don't even know why you're here, because you don't do anything for these children. Nothing. You close schools in the middle of the year, you usurp lives, and you just go about your business like it's all in a day's work. Well, it's not, because I'm very distressed to learn that the only school, elementary school in Central City is closing, and that you have the children have nowhere to go. They can go to Wilson, but that's out of the area. So why can't we just leave things alone and leave well enough alone? Because you know why? Because something is amiss here. So now you're opening this school on Bullitt, you're opening this school on Godet, and I'm going to watch the clock ticks to see just how long they're going to last. And like I said, they make their money and then they move on. Like Armtree said, you get the school.
Any other comments?
That's it.
4.4. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? 4.4 passes. 4.5.
4.5.
4.5.
Next action item 4.6, it's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approve the request from Collegiate Academies to allow Opportunities Academy to operate as its own LEA effective July 1st, 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
No cards on this one.
We have none?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. 4.7.
4.7, it's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approve the request from Inspire NOLA to allow McDonough 35 to operate as its own LEA effective July 1st, 2019.
So move.
I have a motion and a second.
And we have 2 comment cards. Wanda Romaine.
Wanda Romaine, 70131. Excuse me, Dr. Lewis, but my conduct, while salty and unfriendly with my Time Watch thing, was not disruptive to the board meeting. I can let you talk all day long, as you do so well. All right, so my message about this LEA will be reflected in a historical and a contemporary context, so I will stay on topic. McDonough 35 has acted practically as its own LEA since 1917, delivering superior, not good, superior quality education, even as OPSB exercised egregious neglect and indifference toward her students and legacy. 102 years of success, in spite of all that, is its own record. Now for the contemporary. As a graduate, a teacher, and a taxpayer, I expect that OPSB will allow to McDonough 35 to operate in autonomy using its record of excellence through history to flourish and achieve that great mission so prominently displayed on your website. Please do not make a liar of your mission and vision when you give Inspire NOLA the LEA to operate McDonough 35.
Final comment card, Deidre Lewis. Ms. Lewis?
Okay. No more comments? Oh.
Leave 35 alone. I know it's a little too late because you've now chartered the whole entire school system. We now have a system of schools or whatever. It's abominable. I don't like it. And as long as there's breath in my body, I'm going to protest it and tell you how much I don't like it. Because 35 was a school for geniuses, and this is what you do all our black genius schools. You run them into the ground, but you don't touch that sacred cow, Lusher. You don't touch Hines and places like that. All you do is drive out genius schools like 35, like, not Warren Easton, what was that school? On Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall, Gene Gordon, all the black genius schools, you destroy those, but you do not put one finger on your white sacred cows, and I think it's abominable. And the people I'm looking at look just like me and you, and they're doing this to our own. It's ridiculous. They couldn't pay me no $289.
That's the last
Any other
card.
comment?
That's it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. 4.7 carries.
Okay, action item 4.8, it is recommended that Orleans Parish School Board accept the donation of fencing at the Hines Elementary property.
Second.
We do have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. May I have a motion to move in executive session?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
You guys don't want to move? Buddy. I have a motion to reconvene. We have a motion to reconvene. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Ashley? Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Ellison?
Here.
Mr. Cleben?
Here.
Mr. Koppel?
Present.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Ms. Neal Houston?
Here.
Also present are Dr. Henderson Lewis Jr. and Sharonda Williams, Board Counsel. We have a quorum.
Okay. Yield to the board counsel.
The board convened an executive session to discuss items 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. Item 5.1, Donner Fortner versus Orleans Parish School Board, HGI claim number 1270275. It's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approve the settlement in the matter as recommended by legal counsel.
Make the motion that this board accept general counsel's recommendation for action item, in executive session action item 5.1.
Okay, we have a motion, 5.1. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none.
The board also discussed Terry Pettit et al. Versus Orleans Parish School Board CDC number 1994-07003 and Hamps Construction LLC versus Orleans Parish School Board, Orleans Parish Civil District Court number 2012-10546. It's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approve the recommendation of legal counsel regarding next steps in each of these matters.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Second. And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. No further items on the agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn? So move. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, everyone.